Problem solving strategy for optimization problem. First, we need to read the problem until you understand it and draw a figure with all variables labeled. Let's take a look at example 1. An island is 2 miles due north of its closest point along a straight shore line. So this is the point that the question is referring to. 2 miles due north, there's an island. A visitor is staying at a cabin on the shore that is 6 miles west of that point. So from this point 6 miles west to the left, there's a cabin. The visitor is planning to go from the cabin to the island. Suppose the visitor run at a rate of 8 miles per hour and swim at a rate of 3 miles per hour. How fast should the visitor run before swimming to minimize the time it takes to reach the island? So the question is asking how far should the visitor run. Okay, so from the cabin to the point before the visitor is going to swim, that is x, and that is something we're solving for. How far? And we need to understand what we need to minimize. We are minimizing the time that it takes to reach the island. So once we understand the question, we want to write the formula for the quantity to be maximized or minimized. So we know we need to minimize the time, and it is in terms of the distance x. So x is from the cabin to the point where the visitor begin to swim. So at this distance x, the visitor is going to run. And we can calculate the time that it takes for the visitor to run. It is distance divided by the speed. So that is how long it takes for the visitor go from the cabin to the point before he swim. But we also need to add the time where the visitor is going to swim to get the total amount of time that it takes for him to reach the island. So we have to add the time, and it's still distance divided by the speed, and we know the speed of his swimming is 3 miles per hour. And what is this distance right here? It is y. And how do we calculate y? We need to use the known condition, which is 2 miles here, and what is left here is 6 minus x, and it's a right triangle. So we use the Pythagorean theorem. Y will equal the square root of 6 minus x square plus 2 square. So this is a function that we need to minimize. And since everything is already in terms of x, we can go to the step where we take the derivative. So before we take the derivative, we might want to transform the function so it's easier to see. So it's 1/8x plus 1/3. Now instead of 6 minus x, we can write as x minus 6, because when you square 6 minus x and x minus 6 is the same because they're inside a square. It's just that 1 square is the same as -1 square. Okay, so that's plus 4. And this is to the 1/2 power. So we change it to the power form. Then we can take the derivative. T prime of x equal 1/8x, give you 1/8 as a derivative, plus here says we use a power rule, so 1/3 multiplied by 1/2, we get 1/6. X minus 6 squared plus 4, power reduced by 1, so it's negative 1/2. Now times chain rule tells us to take the derivative of the inner function, which is twice x minus 6 times 1. Okay, or if you're confused, you can expand the square, so then you get a polynomial and just take the derivative of the polynomial. So this is a derivative. We need to set it equal 0 and solve for the critical number. So 1/8 plus, we have cancellation here, so it's 1/3. Okay, on the top we have x minus 6. In the bottom we have square root because it's negative 1/2 power. X minus 6 squared plus 4. Now it is just a matter of algebra to solve this problem. So now we subtract 1/8 on both sides. So we get negative 1/8 equal x minus 6, 3 square root x minus 6 squared plus 4. We have two fractions equal each other. We can cross multiply and we can think of it as 1 over negative 8. Okay, so cross multiply, negative 8 x minus 6 equal, this one is 3 square root x minus 6 squared plus 4. So now we square both sides. We get 64 x minus 6 squared equal 9 x minus 6 squared plus 4, and it's multiplied. 9 is multiplied from the outside. Then we see we have 64x minus 6 squared on the left side and 9x minus 6 squared on the right side. We can subtract 9 of those. We get 55x minus 6 squared equal 9 times 4, 36. So what it means is x minus 6 squared equal 36 divided by 55. Now, in order to solve for x, you can still expand it and then solve it as a quadratic function. But since it's already in the power form, so we can just take the square root of both sides. But when you take the square root of both sides, this question is asking whose square equals 36 over 55. There are two numbers whose square equals that. Okay, so they are, so x minus 6 equal plus minus 6 over square root of 55. Therefore, x will equal 6 plus or minus 6 over square root of 55. But you need to understand x is a distance that has to be less than 6, so it cannot be a plus, it must be a minus. So this should be the solution for x. What it means is x is approximately 5.19 miles. So the visitor need to run for 5.19 miles before he swim to minimize the time to reach the island.